We're all in the midst of some coronavirus shutdown, stay-at-home order, and it got me to thinking, what does home mean to you? That's what I'm talking about next on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. I'm in the truck, but I'm parked, and there's a gentle rain falling, so you may hear the rain falling on the roof in the background, but you won't hear any driving noise today. But what I wanted to talk about today was, with the stay-at-home order, I got to thinking about home. And what does home mean to you? I don't mind being at home. I really don't. I mind not being able to make a living. I mind not being able to pay my bills, but I don't mind being at home. The stay-at-home order is not a huge deal for me as long as I can continue to pay my bills. And unfortunately, a lot of people staying home can't pay their bills right now. But anyway, what I got to thinking about with this stay-at-home order, what does home mean to you? And I've known people, I've worked with people from other parts of the country who have moved to North Carolina, who have moved to the Charlotte area from other states and other parts of the country. And a lot of times when these people from other parts of the country take vacations or extended holidays, they say they're going to go home. Well, where is home? Home is a little town in Rhode Island about 30 minutes from Boston. Home is right outside Seattle, Washington. Home is Vacaville, California, not far from San Francisco. They call it Cowtown. But usually when people who weren't born and raised in North Carolina say they're going home, they don't mean going back to the house they currently live in. They're going back to where their family is. They're going back to the place where they were raised. And that's what home means to them. Well, I grew up in North Carolina, so North Carolina will always be home to me. Specifically, the western Piedmont of North Carolina, just east of the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. That's home to me. But my dad was actually from the Andrews area of North Carolina, up in Macon County. We used to call it way up in the mountains, up around the Nantahala River and the Nantahala National Forest. And that kind of felt like home to me too, because that felt like home to my dad. So when I was growing up, whenever my dad wanted to go back home, that's where he took us. So on vacations, quite often, we would go to the mountains. We would maybe make a beach trip once a year, not necessarily make it to the beach every year. But we went to the Appalachian Mountains several times a year, because that's where my dad called home. And we went to the mountains so often when I was a kid that the North Carolina mountains feel like home. I like the beach. I like to go to the beach. I like to go to the Outer Banks, Cape Hatteras. But that was a vacation. That wasn't home. And I remember taking a business trip to Dallas, Texas. And for whatever reason, my plane ticket put me between this married couple. So as we got to talking, I asked the husband, would you like to trade seats with me? Well, as it turns out, this couple was from Johnson City, Tennessee, which is just across the North Carolina state line into Tennessee. And we had a pleasant conversation on our plane trip to Dallas. And I asked this couple, I said, what does Dallas look like out the window as we began to descend toward the Dallas-Fort Worth airport? And you could actually see the landscape. I said, I've never been to Dallas, Texas before. What does Dallas look like? And the guy with disappointment in his voice said, flat and ugly. And I just kind of laughed. I said, we like hills, don't we? And he said, yes, we do. He said, it just doesn't look like home. Well, when I was on the plane back to North Carolina, if you've ever done any traveling by plane at all, as you get closer to your destination, you begin to drop in altitude. And the more you drop in altitude, the more of the scenery you can see out the window. And I noticed as we approached North Carolina, the closer we got to North Carolina, the greener the landscape got. Then I began to see the rolling hills out the plane window, and I could tell we were flying over the mountains. And I remember thinking to myself when I saw the Smoky Mountains, I'm almost home. And when the pilot came over the intercom system and said, "We are beginning our approach, we'll be landing in Charlotte soon," I thought, okay, I'm almost home. And as the plane touched down in the airport in Charlotte, I thought to myself, okay, now I'm home. But after I got to the airport and picked up my bags and was headed from baggage claim on my way out of the airport, I saw my wife and kids. And as soon as I saw their faces, I thought to myself, now I'm really home. This is home. But like I had told my wife, that my home was wherever she and the kids were. Wherever my family was, that was home. And we've lived in this house for a little over 20 years. And I remember when we sold our other house, as we were doing the final walkthrough, all the furniture had been taken out, everything had been moved out, and we were just doing a final walkthrough to make sure we weren't forgetting anything. And I remember my wife commenting on how empty the house was. And I knew what she meant. It wasn't just that the stuff was gone. Our stuff was gone. And it wasn't just our stuff. All the stuff reminded us of being together as a family. The couch where I sat and watched Disney movies with the kids when they were little. The coffee table that all the boys used to hold on to as they were learning how to walk. The kitchen table where we used to sit as a family and have meals together. The bedroom furniture that me and my wife had picked out together. So that big empty house with all the stuff gone, it was like the soul of the house was gone. Because everything in that house reminded us of family. Everything in that house reminded us of home. And when we moved all those memories into the new house, it helped to make the new house home. And being from North Carolina, like a lot of North Carolinians are, I am of Scotch-Irish descent. And whenever I see pictures of Scotland, I'm reminded of why so many Scotch-Irish settlers 200, 300 years ago settled in the North Carolina mountains. Because it reminded them of home. When you see pictures of the Scottish Highlands with the mountains wreathed in clouds and fog, it looks like the Smoky Mountains. That's why they call it the Smoky Mountains. Scotch-Irish settlers went to the North Carolina mountains and settled because it looked like home. And a lot of women, once they start having children, maybe they moved away when they got married, maybe they moved away when they went to college and never went back home. But once they start having kids of their own, a lot of times they want to go back home so they can raise their kids in the place that they were raised, because that was home. So whenever you think about the COVID-19 coronavirus stay-at-home order, home is not such a bad place. As the old saying goes, home is where your heart is. Home is where your family is. Home is where you keep your stuff. And I don't look at the stay-at-home order as a forced quarantine. I look at it rather as I get to stay home. Because after all, home is where my heart is. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you listening. Try to enjoy your time at home. This is a stressful time for everybody. We're all in the same boat. We're all going through the same struggles. But try to enjoy the safety and comfort of being home. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye now.